I'm really excited about today's webinar. It's been a while since we've been here. We've got a huge number of attendees and pleased to be joined by 3 special guests who have a lot of fantastic content to share. So keep things moving along. Our first guest speaker is Esri Australia's very own solution engineer, Sean Jones. Please turn your camera on, give everyone a wave, mate. Sean is based out of our Perth office. Thank you very much. And I'm sure a lot of you have already met and are familiar with him. He's a tech guru who helps design solutions and solve your problems. And today, Sean's going to cover all things from the 2023 UC. Well, maybe not all things. Multi-day event in a 1-hour webinar. Next, super excited, thankful and very honoured to be introducing our next presenter, Peter Roussos from South 32. Give everyone a quick wave, Pete. Pete went to the UC this year and he was invited to be part of the panel for the special interest group. He's going to share what he found interesting in some of his experience being on the panel. So super honoured, very thankful. And our last presenter, so we've got 3 today, is CS Lai. Lai's from Esri Inc. and he's part of the natural resource, his role is a natural resource commercial manager for the APAC region. Thanks, Lai. He's going to give a debrief on this year's Energy Special Interest Group and any updates from the Petroleum User Group. As I mentioned before, we have a lot of people in attendance. There might be a lot of questions. If we do go over time, Lai has offered to join our next rug session for that special interest group and petroleum user group update. Now, before we do cross over to our presenters, I would like to introduce our wider resources team here at Esri Australia. Trev, if you can just show us the next screen, please. Thank you very much. So we've been growing. We've been having a fantastic year here at Esri Australia with a resources team. And this is just some of the faces that you may be familiar with as part of the delivery team. And next screen again, please. This is our resources account and client success team. So it includes, I suppose, the account teams, which I'm part of, client success teams, and also the solution engineering teams. Next screen, please, Trevor. So really, just wanted to quickly have a real quick intro today, allow time for everybody else. But before we do hand over to Sean, Trevor, is there anything that you want to share, please?
Thanks, Jason. Just wanted to welcome everybody for joining us. As you mentioned, it has been a little while since we've had one. So pretty excited for this. I think we've had well over 60 registrations. So I know there's a lot of folk joining us. And yeah, if you have questions, please shout out, particularly, if there's some technology things that we don't touch on, do ask. Sean may not know all the answers. Esri, as you know, has a massive number of applications and it's a really big system. But ask those questions. And yeah, as Jason said, if we go a bit longer, Lai has kindly said that he will join us on our next session. I went to the UC some time ago now. I highly encourage it if you can get there. There's a lot to learn about the technology. You get to meet with the product managers, developers, and you get to go to these special interest groups and you can pick up little nuggets. And I'm sure I've shared this use case with a lot of folk. When I was there, Freeport did a presentation and they were talking about mapping braking events of their haul trucks. And in doing so, they're able to target the road maintenance crew to go out and repair the roads in those areas. And the result of that, I think they were predicting $14 million in fuel savings. And if we think about where we are these days with decarbonation, that's as topical as ever. So lots of those little things that you can pick up, bring back home to your organisations and share those use cases to obviously drive the adoption and the awesome work that everyone does on a day-to-day basis with GIS. So I'll leave it there, Jason, if you want to throw it to our first presenter. Thanks.
Thanks, Trevor. Yeah, no pressure, Sean. Show us how to save $14 million, please. Thank you.
that the throw over, Jason? Thanks. Okay, hopefully everybody can see that screen. Yes. All right, let's go. I've got a lot of content to cover in a short amount of time. This is actually a recast of a Directions Live seminar, which some of our colleagues gave. So if you've seen that, a lot of this information will be familiar, but I pulled in some extra info as well. What we're going to cover is the top tech highlights, ArcGIS Pro, Enterprise, Online, Field Ops, and a few other things thrown in as well. Trevor gave a good introduction to the UC. I won't give a personal experience. I'll also let Peter give his personal experience at the UC, but it's quite an incredible event, and I'd encourage everybody to go if you have the time. Okay, so let's dive into ArcGIS Pro. We'll talk about what's new in 3.1 and beyond or over the horizon. So this is what's new in ArcGIS Pro. This is straight from the actual documentation page. Some of the highlights that are indicated there. Catalog layers and data sets. So being able to give your data sets footprints that you can actually see. So a true data metadata catalog, and view those in all the various applications that we have. Layouts are a big highlight, or if you still produce layouts, certainly producing PDFs from layouts, some big enhancements there as well. Time-enabled scene layers, lots of things coming up in the future. This is out now, but I'll talk about a bit more on this later on. Other things for cartography, performance and productivity improvements, a lot more geoprocessing tools coming into the system, a lot more geoprocessing tools using the GPU, for example. So they're getting a lot more performance out of those actual tools as well. Again, lots and lots of tools that have been added there. One of my favorite tools which have been added, geomorphon tool. It's actually a real word. Basically allows you to identify ridges and valleys and spurs, and these are useful for applications such as bushfires, some hydrological tools as well, placing windmills, etc. I just think it's a pretty cool tool. Coming soon, things that are over the horizon, schema reporting in ArcMap. We had an add-in called the X-ray add-in, which basically dived into your data sets and gave you a visual indication of the schema and also a data dictionary. That's now coming in Core and Pro. Portal projects, your data is in Portal. Why not put the APRX there as well, which you can certainly do. You can do that now as an item, but this is more tighter integration in the future with Enterprise. Actually works quite well. Discard for non-version editing. This is a feature that's in ArcMap. It allows you to basically edit non-version tables. And if you still made mistakes in a short transaction, you could discard all those edits. We never had that in Pro. It was supposed to be in Pro a couple of versions ago. Didn't make it for various reasons. It'll be in Pro 3.2. So that's great. New field types, big integer, for example. There's also a timestamp with a time zone coming in as new fields. The big integer is really to support the next object there, which is 64-bit object ID for big data. Now you can actually put trillions of features in your layers. Please don't put trillions of features in your layers, but you can certainly think about doing that. Flood simulation modeling, this came up in a few sessions. Esri's spending a lot of time actually looking at a proper flood simulation model. It's not going to be probably as good as the professional out-of-the-box standalone applications that you can get, but it's going to be pretty close. And as I said, Esri's putting a lot of work into making that work across the ArcGIS system. Presentations is really about story maps. Okay, we go through a web interface for that now. This is putting story maps, being able to build them in ArcGIS Pro itself and also publish them also. Orientated imagery is the idea where you're taking handheld photography or drone inspection images, building it into a geolocated a view of your imagery where it is, what they're actually looking at, enable you to take measurements from that imagery as well. You can do that now in Pro, but now it's done by a bit of an add-in that you use to generate these catalogs. It's a bit clunky, but it works. 3.2 will actually see it part of the core software and it'll be a lot more smoother workflow. ArcGIS Enterprise 11.1 and beyond. Now, remember that ArcGIS Enterprise lags behind ArcGIS Online by a couple of versions. So a lot of these things that you're seeing here is new in ArcGIS Enterprise have really been out in ArcGIS Online for a while now. So we see things like in the map viewer, enhanced arcade expressions, both for symbology, for labeling, and for a lot of analytical scripting as well. We can use arcade now in the map viewer itself. Feature binning, clustering, again, these are things that have been in ArcGIS Online, coming through to Enterprise, pie charts for features, multi-layer symbols, and again, performance enhancements in map viewer itself. Scene viewer, yeah, for when it snows in the Pilbara region, you can actually show snow up there. It's a bit of a gimmick, but you might be able to play around with day and cloud effects as well in your scene views. Integration with OpenStreetMap to bring in 3D buildings, more applicable to an urban environment for sure. GeoJSON files, you can drag those directly into scenes and view those as well. So if you have as-built designs or whatever it happens to be in a GeoJSON format, you can drag those directly into scenes. And we pull in the line of sight analysis, view sheds, the splice tool, for example. We get those from ArcGIS Online and carry those across into the scene viewer. And dimensions as well. So now you can actually do dimension markups in the scene viewer itself and have that persist along across ArcGIS. Some enhancements to administration. I won't go over too many of these, but scanning your portal for members is pretty hot. It links into Active Directory and your LDAP as well, so you can actually pick up dead accounts and clean those out of your system. And there's a few other enhancements in there as well, which are quite nice. Custom data feeds. This is something we could do in ArcObjects a long time ago. It's really supporting non-native data formats. And this is a bad slide because all these formats are actually natively supported. But it's really the esoteric ones where you can actually start to build a custom data feed, leave the data in its own native format. Somebody else might be looking after it, and you can simply just display it, use it for analysis, not particularly edit it, but view it in ArcGIS Enterprise and again across the rest of the ArcGIS system. It was a pain to do in ArcObjects. It's a bit easier to do it now with this setup. Couple of highlights. This is a big one, keeping track of changes in your data to hosted feature layers. You can do this in ArcGIS Online today. Now you'll be able to do it in ArcGIS Enterprise 11.1. There's no UI for this, but it is exposed to applications. So you can actually write an application to look at your changes in hosted feature layers. You could do this in the geodatabase already, of course, but now we're actually doing it on hosted feature layers. Raster analysis tools move to the map viewer from map viewer classic, which means there really isn't much of a reason to keep the map viewer classic around. Now you can do all those raster analysis from map viewer. Support for raster types. This is your multi-dimensional rasters, your .NET CDFs, etc. Webhooks. What else we got? Categories, new sharing privileges. A couple of bizarre sharing privileges, which is now coming along to enterprise. Some of that's in documentation, some of that's coming in the future. Okay, what's new in ArcGIS Online? Map Viewer gets more improvements. This
Hi,
is the
Sean.
future.
Sorry to interrupt. There was a question just a little bit back from Chris Brown.
Yep.
So he just asked, is surface area tools available in scenes?
To do the volumes of surface areas and stuff in scenes? Yes. So yeah, it comes across from ArcGIS Online, so you can do the 2D planar volumes. Yeah, you can't do cut and fill in a scene. You would use a geoprocessing tool for that. But simple surface volume, yes, you can do that. Yeah, good question.
Thanks, mate.
What else we got? Map viewer, expanding the view capabilities. So here we see radio buttons for group layers, and there's a couple of more enhancements coming down the track. Support for editing related records. This is pretty huge. A lot of us have drill hole databases, or we're bringing in other information using FME from other databases, for example. We can leave that as a related table. We don't have to bolt it onto the base table anymore, and we can use the editing tools in the map viewer to edit those related tables. It's a pretty big improvement. Using Arcade for more extended pop-ups, charts, etc. Dashboards are now coming to mobile devices. I thought this was a bit corny at first, but the idea is actually growing on me. The idea you can just whip out that's also coming to Experience Builder. New widgets in Experience Builder. This is really the continuation of the migration from Web App Builder into to Experience Builder. So more widgets are coming along, more ones are being created. For example, here's a new one called Near Me, which combines apparently 5 existing web apps builders and making a new tool. I think this will be Jason's best used tool because he likes to do this demo where he draws a path or draws a buffer and then actually looks at all the information within it. So that's now an out-of-the-box widget. Swipe tool comes into Experience Builder. So we've had this in Pro for a long time. Just being able to swipe between 2 different data sets, 2 different times, for example, is very useful. So it's a nice new widget there as well. And again, that's coming to the mobile space also. Instant apps. I don't know many people actually use instant apps. They're kind of nice to generate a quick application that you might bring into a story map, but I don't know if many people actually use it. Some enhancements there. Insert maps, quite useful, again, for story maps in this case. It gets additional functions as well, undo, redo, story builder, accessibility updates, and so on. I won't dwell on that too much.
Sean, if I can just interrupt you there. Just back on Experience Builder, correct me if I'm wrong here, but we are deprecating the web app builder. So should ArcGIS teams then be moving those applications across to Experience Builder? And if so, how much time do they have?
How much time is a good question. I can't remember, Trevor, do you? I don't. I should know that, but
No.
I don't. Soon-ish, probably near term, not short term for sure. But certainly Web App Builder will become deprecated in the near-term future. So yes, you should be thinking about moving all your applications across. It's not a straight migration, of course. The two aren't that compatible. Obviously, the underlying data is, but yeah, you have to think about moving your tools, especially your custom tools, any that you've written. They will need to be redone for Experience Builder.
Thanks, and I think Mary and Craig
Okay.
have dropped some stuff in the chat there about the time frame, and I think it's a really good opportunity when you're looking at that, is thinking about the audience, you know, because you can create a better experience for our audience, and just think about that and how you might do things differently on that journey. Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, Craig, Mary, and Truly for coming in there as well. Okay, story maps, field operations. What's new? Survey 123, easy ways to generate drop downs from the actual underlying data of the feature layer itself. It's quite nice. And also a connector for Microsoft Power Automate. This is kind of like a webhook nature, where if you complete a survey and submit it, an action takes place. Typically, you would do that with a webhook, where you had to write some script to do that. Now you can actually plug into the Microsoft Power Automate framework, which, as I said, has a connector. It's a drag and drop type of framework. You can write code if you need, if you want to. You don't have to, but you get things like email notifications and automatic handling of data. I tried this out last week. I took a survey, and when I submitted it, I actually split up the survey into different data parcels, and I put a photograph in one place. I put the survey on SharePoint, etc., and actually worked pretty well. It surprised me that I got it to work so easily. So that was an interesting enhancement there. Quick capture, again, I'm not sure how many people use this out in the field, but again, it's a big button, simple to use field capture application. It wasn't meeting some people's needs in terms of digging down or giving greater options. Here, the example on the screen is we got an incident and we want severity, low, medium, high, for example. In the old quick capture, that would be 3 separate buttons, of course, but now we can actually dig down 1 level and maybe 2 levels in the future to actually provide more information about that particular thing that we're actually capturing. So maybe it doesn't become quick capture, it's more like a medium capture now, I don't know. Okay, field maps. The big news in field maps is we now support Windows 11. That's done by running the Android subsystem on Windows and running the Android version of field maps. It works, it's out there. So any of those old Panasonic tough books that you threw away, maybe you can actually buy them back and use them for field work. But it's a pretty interesting change. Enhancement to smart forms, mostly in terms of controlling editability and visibility. There's some more functions in there to make it a bit more friendly. Geofences have, of course, been in field maps for a while. The only thing we had to trigger a geofence was entering or leaving a polygon or getting close to a line or a point feature. Now we can actually put in arcade expressions, and this opens up a universe of possibilities. So for the example here is that we're only triggering a geofence at a certain time of day, for example. Because we had the power of arcade there, we can say, well, may only apply to a certain type of user. Who have they log in as, or maybe we can look at data around where I'm actually located and use that in the geofence equation as well. So Arcade gives us all those possibilities. It's quite exciting there. Good old workflow manager, way of automating workflows, both within certain products or in ArcGIS as a whole, making decisions, sending out notifications, writing and reading from data sets, Survey 123 integration, web applications integration as well. Big news here is it's now available in ArcGIS Online, whereas previously it was in Enterprise itself. The Reality Engine is kicking on. We have that supported in 4 products. This is the ability to take drones, aerials, satellite imagery, produce 2D and 3D products. It's a standalone application by itself. There's also an extension for Pro. The Reality Engine now exists in SiteScan and also Drone to Map, and it enables you to create some pretty compelling 3D views and also 3D objects, 3D meshes, etc. Quite nice with that engine. Digital twins were all over the place at UC, so I'm told this is City Engine, which still kicks on. I don't think many people would have a need to use it here, but just wanted to bring that up in general. That digital twins, not a new topic, of course, we've been doing it for decades, but just a new buzzword out there. Speaking of buzzwords, the key things that are trending, SDIs, we know about those. If anybody can tell me what IGI is, Jason will give you a door prize because I have no idea. Digital twins, Geo AI was also a pretty hot topic. We see lots of blogs and videos coming out of Esri for those sort of topics. And also imagery has always been a big focus of Esri, and we'll see that improving in the future as well. Just wanted to throw a few things in. This is from the 3D Road Ahead session, what's happening in 3D with ArcGIS across the system there. A couple of interesting things, the flood simulation again, I mentioned again there. Down the bottom here, we have time-enabled elevation layers in Pro. So this is the idea that you're taking your surface layers into something like a multi-dimensional raster, NetCDF, and then enabling it with time. So as you move the time slider across the top of Pro there, you can actually see your surface changing over time. Okay, so we can make some pretty compelling visualizations for your minds, how they've changed in the past, how they're going to change in the future. Combine those with other time-enabled layers that you have, and again, you can make some compelling animations out of those as well, and a whole bunch of other 3D things coming in the horizon. The web editor, I wanted to throw this in because it's kind of dear to my heart. This has been in the pipeline for a number of years. This is the idea of taking a lot of the Pro standard editing workflows out of the desktop and throwing it into the web editor. So you don't really need to use Pro to edit data out there. You can just simply use a web browser. It'll be set up for specific domains, but also for general use. As we probably all know, the standard editing experience in the web isn't that great. This is designed to make it at least coming up to Pro standard type of level. As part of that, tasks are also a big thing in Pro, of course, so tasks will be coming along for the ride as well. So we'll have those in this web editor application. Okay, the top 5 sessions, so I'm told, so I didn't go, was ArcGIS Hub, Field Operations, Map Wizardry, Spatial Data Science, another key trending thing that we see, and apparently these were quite good sessions also. So things that we covered.
Just might pause you there again, because the ArcGIS Hub is not something that we consider frequently in the resources sector, but we are actually working with a client on Hub, and it's a really great way to engage your external stakeholders. So if you want to provide some understanding of what's happening on the areas, the land that which you operate, then Hub is a good way to share that, to ensure that the message that your organisation wants to share is being put out there, and ensure that secure access, even that registered access to your information that you want to publish. And and you can combine that with all of the different apps that obviously that Sean's been working out, in particular, you know, your story maps and things like that, which are a great way to communicate issues, projects, whatever it is, both internally and externally. So one to look at. If you're not sure on the full details of Hub, just shout out and we can go through it with you. But I think it's a pretty exciting tool, and one that is probably overlooked in resources.
Thanks, Trev. So what did we look at in this session? So top tech highlights for Pro Enterprise Online Field Ops, and took a look at some of the trends and roadmaps. Resources, just do a Google search for what's new in anything, and it'll probably come up with a blog or a documentation page for describing what's currently in the current version of the software. And yeah, consult the community, of course, and then of course, any questions, please reach out to us in the future. Okay, let's pass it back to Jason.
Thanks, Sean. That was a lot of stuff to go through, and no doubt people have a lot of questions. So obviously today's session is just about a quick brief overview. If anybody wants to know anything else or have a more deep dive into anything that Sean touched on today, please reach out to any of us here at Esri Australia. and we can set up some one-on-one sessions. Wasn't aware that we're doing a door prize, but Anthony, you jumped in first straight after Mary, so Mary cheated. She's part of the team, but I'm sure I can raid the merch desk and get something to you shortly. So I'll be in contact and we'll sort something out for you there, mate. So really appreciate everyone being active on the chat. It's been great today. Our next presenter is Peter Roussos from South 32. So he's one of the lucky ones that actually got to get along to the UC. And Pete, thanks for joining us today. As usual, really, really appreciate your time, and I'm looking forward to hearing what it was like. Thank you very much. Right, and I'll get you some merch as well, mate.
I'll just check quickly that I'm audible and you can see my share screen or not.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Okay, wonderful. All right. Oops. Let me get that off. All right, thanks for having me, and thanks, Sean, for that tech update roundup. It was quite good, and I honestly can say the mobility space was a real big highlight for me, seeing all the changes and the advances they've had and what's coming up. So I'm the lightweight halftime entertainment. So hopefully I won't have any wardrobe malfunctions, but I might have some tech ones. We'll see how we go. But I just wanted to give, a fairly soft overview of my experience there at the UC. That was the first time I'd been there. So it was really wonderful to actually attend. So what you can see on screen is just a couple of quick grabs just to get us talking. This is bottom down here is a mural that they had on one of the big walls, which gave some really neat high-level numbers. First 1981, over 20,000 attendees. I was one of the first time attendees as well in this stat down here of 8,000 users. And also, the amount of coffee you drink is quite huge, staggering that you get through. You've got to make it through the day. And the amount of steps. How big this conference is, you don't realise, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. But yes, average number of steps, I reckon it's probably a lot higher than the 11,400 that they've noted here. I think just talking to a few people with their smartwatches and what have you, they were clocking up about 15,000 steps a day quite easily. And what you see in the top right is the opening plenary session with Jack's big speech, and it's quite fascinating and quite impressive as to the scale and how, of course, slick it is. It's quite good. So just moving along, I thought I'd just touch on some of the practicalities of all this. How do we get there in the first place, and also what you need to sort of consider when you're there as well. But first of all, how to get there? Well, building that business case, I felt, is obviously quite important. And consider it, do you have a strategy in place? And strategy was a real big item that was repeated throughout the whole conference. Does your business have a strategy? Are you aligned? And what budget do you have? That were generic things, but more importantly, for the business case to get over to the UC, included as part of your strategy, included as part of your skill development within your organisation, and also put into your budget, of course. I think it's invaluable attending it. I know a lot of businesses out there want to say, well, what's my ROI on sending someone to an international conference? It's hard to quantify, but returning back and seeing and speaking to people, that's where the real value add is. And I'll leave it up to yourselves to sort of think about how you message that to your executives or your managers on what your return on investment is. But incorporating this part of your strategy, if you are going through strategy change, attending something like this is really valuable because you do get exposure to those data architects, understanding what infrastructure requirements you need, what is emerging, what other strategies have been implemented and how they do it. Also, if you are lucky enough to have an enterprise agreement with Esri, you probably get a number of registrations as part of your kit. So use that to your advantage as well. And planning ahead, I can't emphasize enough not to try and leave it to the last moment. And when I say last moment, the last month or so, because things do get expensive. Accommodation gets booked out very quickly. Now that I've been through it, I would recommend if you do have an enterprise agreement and when the early release for accommodation does come out, then I recommend just locking it in because you're not paying for it right there and then. You're just locking in your dates. And once you get clarification on times, you can modify accordingly and you're not paying until quite later on in the piece. So work out your budget. So obviously factor in your flights, those accommodation details, because if you do miss those early release accommodation deals, things get really, really super expensive. And of course, where to stay. I stayed in the gas lamp quarter, and I found that to be really convenient because it's a few steps away from the convention centre. So you do get to walk through the town and enjoy what's in between your accommodation and the convention centre. Otherwise, if you're staying at the other end of the convention centre at the Hilton or the Marriott, that's all you'll see. So essentially just try and get out a bit, enjoy being where you are, and also find out who else is going, whether that be internally, depending on the size of your organisation, but also through the Esri team to find out who else is going through the resources sector, or also government agencies or other industries as well. That's really useful to find that out because it is big and it's always nice to see a familiar face when you're there. So the UC itself, wow, what can I say? It's massive. Like you get a picture in your mind as to how big it is, and then you actually attend and you just blows it out of the water, whatever concept you had in your mind. That's why I recommend real comfortable shoes because you are going to be doing a lot of walking. What sessions to attend? That was a really hard thing to sort of grapple with. And because there are so many sessions, it's like, where do I go? In retrospect now, I feel like you should probably attend what's new early on, or the what's new sessions, because then you can hit the expo floor. And the expo floor is this picture up here, in the top left. It is huge. That photo doesn't do it justice. And so they divide the expo floor into various sections. So you have the whole Esri team at the back end of the expo area, and that's divided up into sections like ArcGIS Pro section, and then it's then subsectioned within that, 3D component, analysis component, building apps component. Then you have your web areas, your ArcGIS Online, your enterprise, so on and so forth. You get the idea. And then you have all the vendors, of course. And it's really great to have all the vendors in the one place because if you do have real specific questions, you can hit them. So that's why I sort of felt, okay, probably could have hit what's new sessions first, have a think about how it applies to my organisation, and then hit the expo floor and follow up with the experts on the floor with some questions and some ideas. And, you just got to be a little bit patient because obviously there's 20,000 people. You might have to come back again and meet the vendors or the expert staff on the Esri desks as well. Then they have also startup groups, which are really interesting to see, and little power rooms where they just have little 10-minute sessions on particular applications or a particular component of the product. And don't forget the map gallery. This is the top right-hand corner. The map gallery, again, is large, and there's some really good maps. And, it's nice to see that application, as well as the digital version of story maps being applied to the gallery as well. And what you see in the top right was the official launch, I suppose, of the map gallery that evening, where everyone turned up and saw things there. And that's, again, meeting people is a wonderful thing to do. It's hard when you've got 20,000 people, but everyone's in the same boat, and everyone's really super friendly and wanting to meet new people and just share experiences as well. Lots of special interest groups, and when you register, all the relevant emails come out to you probably a week prior, so you get an idea of what's available. So whether it's within the mining user group or the petroleum user group or Asia Pacific user group, there's a special interest group for you. And social events, attend them. It's great. You're there for a reason. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to be overwhelmed with tech, getting your nerd on, as I said, down the bottom there. But also give yourself time to socialize. It's really important and really great. They create really good opportunities, especially with the end of conference party at Balboa Park. It's wonderful. And also the special interest groups have their own little separate events. Okay, so more importantly, what happened at the mining user group? Well, they dedicate a day for the mining user group, and that has certain streams. So it goes for pretty much most of the day, and hosted in one area, so you don't have to walk around too much, and that makes it a lot easier. It was a great opportunity to share experiences and those stories, and I felt, as I always say in these forums, everyone's got similar issues, challenges, stories, and it's really great to see people sharing those and just talking about them. And it's done in a way that it's interactive. It's really good. So you don't feel you just got to sit there confined in an auditorium and just listen to people speak, and then the next presentation comes on board. It's quite interactive. People jump in questions, and again, it's really positive, a real positive atmosphere. And because these streams, everyone's in the same industry, there's understanding and connection as well. So what was the panel discussion about? Well, it was about the trends and technology within the mining space. So who was on the panel? It was, I'll get my mouse. So we had Rebecca over here on the left. Then we had Dave Donaldson from Tech, and we had John Blackmore from Luck Companies, Luckstone. So throughout this panel discussion, it was good to see the experiences from I wouldn't say junior, but smaller size companies, to hearing the more global, larger scale companies with their ideas and their thoughts on trends in technology. So one of the questions posed, and I'll go through this fairly quickly because there's a lot to cover, but also I want Lei to have a chance to have his input at the end there as well, is where organisations have driven the use and adoption. And for us in South32, it was creating greater visibility and awareness, getting access to the leaders to make those decisions, and being aligned with the business plan. And that was a common theme amongst the panelists as well, and the larger audience as well. So ensuring that your strategy is aligned with the business plan somewhat, otherwise you can have a bit of a mismatch. And going into that role of emerging tech, look, you can go on, and as Sean said, there was digital twins and automation and that sort of stuff. So, but it was more to do with, vision of machine learning, NLP and analytics, and how that can help also with safety. How can spatial help with safety? And that was a big topic during the discussion as well, particularly with your real-time monitoring and your automation to facilitate, that integration piece. And then there was also like using spatial for your mine closure and rehab. And as Trevor sort of touched on before, was, the decarbonisation is a big component now. Using spatial for site selection, energy demand analysis, and also resource management, but also having that climate projection as well for your organisation. Moving along, what were some of the advantages of these emerging tech? I think for me, the first and foremost was the increasing safety, reducing harm and risk. And if you can put your business case together and show an aim for improving safety, or being a component or being a cog in that safety wheel, then you're going to be kicking goals and go along that journey. Obviously, efficiency and productivity, less fatigue, real time. The classic of cost reduction, trying to show that was a challenge with a lot of businesses. But the emerging tech, the metaverse with virtual reality and augmented reality as well, sort of like spatial data sharing and open data initiatives. But also looking at Databricks was another conversation that was being had. But going back to that previous session of decarb, but looking at the next gen mine, and that's something that for South32 is pretty important, but I'm sure it's the same across the industry as well, is, getting your foundations, looking at your integration and optimization, and looking at your different work streams and data management and governance. Some of those foundation things are quite important and quite common across organisations. One of the standout presentations during the mining user group was by Emirate. Now, they actually won a special achievement award as well, so that probably indicates why it was so good. But they used an agile approach to rolling out their GIS, and that by doing that, they were able to deliver quite quickly a lot of solutions with a targeted audience, having sponsors funding it as well. So they weren't just creating workspaces or creating tools or packages. They actually had sponsors. There was a targeted audience showing that delivery, that value delivery to the business. So they had a strategy in place. They had multiple systems going. They had challenges of geographical locations as well, and different levels of maturity and uptake. But also they explained how they were able to get across those challenges as well by influencing and getting the operating model correct and endorsed by the organisation, similar to what we've done at South32 as well, and getting specialists at each of those regions to help seed those GIS initiatives. And, they talked about, their first scope, steering committees every month, and their sprint team. So it was a really neat way of looking at how GIS was managed within the organisation. So moving along to the final bit, just to give you an idea as well, I'll just bring across this. This was the user guide for the UC. So just at a glance, you get an idea of the timetable as well, and what's going on. and also a bunch of technical workshops that would be relevant for the mining stream. So that was quite neat to have that as a accompaniment. So moving on to the last one, the takeaways. Don't try and attend everything, as I said earlier. It's so big, you just wear yourself out. If you are going with colleagues or friends, or you know of other people, divide and conquer and just share that experience and share those notes. You want to be able to absorb the conference, and because it's not very often that you be able to get into this type of environment and enjoy it. You know, get in there, connect about the people as well. So lots of tech, but a common theme as well was about, it's more about the people, and the tech comes later on in its applications, and have fun. You know, and thanks, Trev, for giving me that link to the breweries of San Diego. That was quite useful. You know, and managed to hit just a couple of them with a few people from conference, and just go out and enjoy and talk shop and be social. That was my biggest takeaways from that one there. With that, I'll stop and pass back to Jason, and hopefully there's enough time for Lee to round up.
Thanks, Pete. I had a good giggle then, because Trev's always useful to knowing different types of breweries and what's the best to go for. I followed you on LinkedIn as you were there, and it was great to see you were really active on LinkedIn, and all I've seen was every post was of you with a smile from ear to ear. So it looked like you had a really good time. But I'm curious to open the floor to questions, if anyone has questions for Peter. But also, was there a trend in regards to the type of the attendance? Was it from certain departments, be it, you know, exploration teams? Was it more environmental teams? Was there a trend there at all, Peter?
It was predominantly, your spatial teams. And there were a handful of managers as well from those departments. So that was really good to see that they had interest in the spatial technology and how that can be applied to their broader business. So that was great to see that they were part of that journey and understanding as well. And lots of managers, like there was a manager summit or forum workshop on the Sunday, for example, which I attended, which was really good. That's one thing I forgot to mention. There are pre-conference workshops that you can attend, which are quite good. And yes, you're right, Jason, there were a lot of environmental teams as well, but predominantly people from the geosciences within that mining user stream.
Thank you very much. Oh yeah, good question from Gareth. Did you finish off with fish tacos?
No, I didn't get the chance. They were all gone.
Excellent. Look, we are running maybe a bit short on time to fit Lai into the end of the session, but he has offered to join the next one. I would like to open, the last few minutes that we do have, questions to the floor. Like obviously Sean touched on all the stuff. I think we could talk about what's new and applications and how we can apply all the what's new information for days. But any questions, I suppose, for Peter and or Sean, please?
There is so much to cover. We didn't really touch on imagery today, and that's a huge part of what we do as well, and site scan and things like that. And of course, we have one of our experts in our business, Gordon Summerling, which I know many of you know, which I'll be talking to Gordon to give an update in that space on upcoming rugs. So we will be having, hopefully moving forward, another rug in a much shorter period than this one. So look out for that. I hope to have something out very soon on that one before Christmas, and we'll see. I'm endeavouring to get another guest presenter from industry on that one as well. You may have seen we've got a bit of an ebook out that you can take a look at. It's I guess the ebook looks at some of the tools and some of the things you can do fairly quickly. If you're a mid-tier or a small miner, I really think you should download this and take a look. I'll throw a link into the chat at the end, or Jason will do that for me as well, so you don't have to scan the QR. Thanks, Jason. But there's lots of things in there that the small and large organisations can leverage and take a look at. So that's about it, really. Let me just check. I've got nothing else to say here in my notes. Yeah. So the ebook, the next rug. We'll get onto that very soon.
Last but not least, everybody, thank you very much for attending. Today was a huge attendance, so obviously everyone's really keen to see where our technology is going. It is so hard to keep up with it, and imagine for you who are using it Anger every single day, doing business as usual, it's even harder. So feel free to reach out to our team if you have any questions. Make suggestions about what you want to see in your next rug webinars. We're always looking for ideas. Really appreciate everyone's time again. Thank you for attending. We hope you found value, and stay safe.